Discipline is a choice, not a feeling. Too often, people convince themselves that they must wait until the right emotion appears, until they feel inspired, until motivation magically strikes before they begin working on their goals. That is the great lie that procrastination tells. Waiting for readiness is not preparation, it is avoidance wearing the mask of logic. If you wait for the feeling, you surrender your power to fleeting emotions that shift like the wind. But when you choose discipline, you reclaim control. You act not because you feel like it, but because you have decided that the action matters more than the mood. The truth is, feelings are unreliable. Some mornings you wake up energized, other days you don't. Some tasks excite you, others feel heavy and dull. If discipline depended on feelings, nobody would ever finish what they started. Great achievements are not born out of comfort or convenience. They are built on the back of deliberate choices, repeated daily, even when everything inside you resists. The athlete does not train because they feel motivated every morning. They train because they have chosen to become the kind of person who honors their commitment regardless of the weather or their mood. The entrepreneur does not push through setbacks because excitement never fades. They push because they have decided that progress is more important than comfort. Action creates readiness. The first step is always the hardest, but once you move, clarity follows. Think about the times you dreaded starting something, writing a report, cleaning your space, going to the gym. The thought felt heavy, but the moment you began, something shifted. Energy appeared where there was none, momentum built where resistance once lived. That is the secret of discipline. You do not wait for readiness. You create it by choosing to start. Motion generates motivation, not the other way around. Discipline is also the foundation of trust with yourself. Every time you follow through, even when you don't feel like it, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. You build evidence that you can rely on your own word. But every time you delay, every time you make excuses, you erode that trust. You start to believe the story that you are someone who never finishes, who cannot be counted on. Discipline, therefore, is not about punishment, it is about identity. You are shaping your future self with every decision you make in the present. It is easy to admire others who achieve greatness and assume they are different, blessed with more talent, luck, or motivation. But the truth is simpler. They mastered the art of choosing discipline over feelings. They acted when others hesitated. They built routines when others relied on moods. And they understood that growth comes not from occasional bursts of effort, but from consistent choices made day after day. Discipline turns ordinary people into extraordinary performers because it compounds. Small acts of self-control, repeated over time, create massive transformation. Laziness whispers that tomorrow will be better, that the mood will come later, that you can afford to delay. But discipline answers with a firm no. Discipline says today matters, this moment matters, and the action you take now shapes everything that follows. You cannot control how you feel, but you can always control the choice you make. And that choice, discipline, becomes the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Purpose makes laziness irrelevant because when you have a powerful why, the excuses that once held you back lose their grip. Think about the times in your life when you've been driven by something bigger than yourself. An urgent deadline, a loved one depending on you, a dream you could not ignore. In those moments, laziness simply could not survive. You didn't wait for motivation or comfort, you acted because the reason behind the action mattered more than the difficulty of the task. Purpose is the fuel that burns through hesitation. It gives meaning to effort and transforms work from something you have to do into something you are called to do. The problem with laziness is not that people are incapable, but that they lack connection to a meaningful reason to push forward. Without purpose, every task feels heavy, every challenge feels optional, and every distraction feels justified. But when purpose is present, energy is found even in exhaustion. A parent wakes up in the middle of the night to feed a crying child not because it is easy, but because the love behind the act makes sleep less important. A student studies deep into the night not because they enjoy the grind, but because the vision of who they can become outweighs the comfort of rest. Purpose transforms effort into devotion. Excuses thrive in the absence of clarity. When you don't know why you're doing something, the mind naturally seeks reasons to delay or avoid it. Laziness says, I'll do it tomorrow, I'm too tired, or it's not the right time. But a strong why silences those voices. Imagine someone training for a marathon to prove to themselves they can overcome self-doubt. Rain, sore muscles, or busy schedules lose their power against the clarity of that goal. Every excuse that once sounded convincing now feels weak compared to the vision of crossing that finish line. Purpose makes resistance irrelevant because it anchors you to something greater than momentary discomfort. Purpose also reframes sacrifice. Without it, effort feels like suffering. With it, effort feels like investment. Waking up at dawn to work on your craft, staying late to complete a project, saying no to distractions. These are not punishments. They are choices made willingly because they serve a larger mission. Purpose turns discipline into joy. It reminds you that what you are doing today has value, even if the reward is far away. That perspective makes laziness unnecessary because the trade-off is no longer comfort versus work. It becomes short-term ease versus long-term fulfillment. Look at those who leave an impact on the world. They are not immune to fatigue or temptation. They feel the same pull of laziness that everyone does. The difference is their why is bigger than their excuses. Leaders fight through doubt because they believe in the people depending on them. Artists persist through failure because their message must be expressed. Innovators push boundaries because their vision of a better future is too strong to abandon. Purpose does not erase difficulty, but it makes difficulty worth enduring. When you align your life with purpose, you stop negotiating with laziness. You stop asking whether you feel like it or whether the timing is right. The why becomes non-negotiable. Work becomes a reflection of who you are and what you stand for. Excuses lose their power because nothing can compete with a mission that matters. Purpose is the antidote to procrastination, the cure for hesitation, and the ultimate reason laziness becomes irrelevant. Momentum beats motivation because while motivation is temporary and unreliable, momentum is self-sustaining once it begins. Motivation depends on feelings, and feelings fluctuate daily. Some mornings you wake up ready to conquer the world, and others you barely want to get out of bed. If your progress relies on being motivated, you will move in bursts, sometimes fast, sometimes not at all. But momentum is different. Momentum builds from action, from the smallest step forward, and once it starts, it creates its own energy. Laziness cannot compete with momentum because momentum transforms effort into habit and habit into progress. Consider the difference between someone waiting for motivation to exercise and someone who commits to walking for just 5 minutes a day. The first person may exercise occasionally when they feel inspired, but the second begins building momentum with a tiny, manageable action. Over time, that 5 minutes turns into 10, then into a routine, and eventually into a lifestyle. What began as a small step snowballs into transformation. Laziness has no room to breathe because the momentum carries them forward even when enthusiasm fades. Momentum works because it rewires the brain to expect and embrace consistency. Each time you follow through, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who takes action. You prove to yourself that effort is possible even without motivation. This self-trust compounds. Just as a rolling ball gathers speed, consistent action gathers energy. Soon, it feels harder to stop than to keep going. What once required discipline now requires almost no thought at all. This is why momentum outlasts laziness. Laziness thrives on hesitation, but momentum eliminates hesitation by replacing it with rhythm. The greatest mistake people make is believing they need to start big. They wait for the perfect plan, the perfect day, or the perfect burst of energy. But the truth is, big beginnings often lead to big burnout. What sustains progress is not intensity but consistency. Writing 1 page a day creates a book. Saving a small amount regularly builds wealth. Practicing a skill for a few minutes daily leads to mastery. Momentum beats motivation because small steps taken daily are stronger than massive leaps taken occasionally. Momentum also creates emotional energy. Think about how you feel when you finally begin a task you've been putting off. At first, resistance is high, but once you start, you feel lighter, more capable, even energized. That is momentum at work. Action generates motivation, not the other way around. You cannot think your way into progress, you must act your way into it. Every step forward gives you proof that you are capable, and that proof fuels the next step. Laziness cannot survive in the presence of evidence that action is possible. Even in the face of obstacles, momentum provides resilience. When setbacks occur, motivation often disappears, leaving people stuck. But if you already have momentum, a setback is just a pause, not a collapse. The habit of moving forward makes restarting easier because you are never truly starting from zero. Laziness preys on the belief that missing one day means failure, but momentum teaches that consistency is not perfection. It is persistence. The most powerful thing about momentum is that it compounds invisibly. You may not notice the difference after a few days or even weeks, but months later, the results become undeniable. The energy of small, consistent actions builds into something laziness cannot match. Where motivation fades and excuses grow, momentum keeps carrying you forward step by step until effort becomes second nature and progress becomes inevitable. Comfort is the enemy of growth because comfort convinces you that staying the same is enough. It whispers that you deserve rest when you haven't yet earned progress, that you should take it easy when you still have work to do, that you can always start tomorrow when the truth is tomorrow is never guaranteed. Growth demands discomfort. It demands stretching beyond what feels safe, familiar, or easy. Every time you choose ease, you are making an unconscious agreement to remain exactly where you are, and in that agreement, you trade the possibility of who you could become for the convenience of who you already are. The human mind and body are designed to adapt. Muscles grow only when they are challenged beyond their current strength. Skills sharpen only when they are tested beyond current ability. Courage develops only when fear is faced instead of avoided. Without discomfort, there is no reason to adapt, no need to evolve. Comfort provides temporary pleasure but long-term stagnation. Growth provides temporary struggle but long-term transformation. The question is not whether you want to grow. The question is whether you are willing to endure the discomfort that makes growth possible. Every great achievement requires sacrifice. The athlete's sacrifice is comfort in training, waking up early, enduring pain, pushing through exhaustion. Because the vision of victory outweighs the pull of ease. The entrepreneur sacrifices comfort by taking risks, working long hours, and facing uncertainty because the possibility of building something greater fuels them more than the safety of routine. The student sacrifices comfort by studying late, challenging their mind, and refusing shortcuts because the reward of mastery is worth more than the relief of laziness. None of these journeys are easy, and that is exactly why they lead to growth. Comfort also breeds complacency. When life feels too easy, ambition dulls. You settle for good enough even though greatness is within reach. You repeat the same patterns, live the same days, and wonder why nothing changes. Growth is uncomfortable precisely because it disrupts the cycle. It forces you into situations where you don't yet know the outcome, where mistakes are possible, where failure is a risk. But in those spaces of uncertainty lies the only path to improvement. If you are unwilling to feel discomfort, you are also unwilling to discover your potential. The truth is, comfort costs more than discomfort. At first, comfort feels cheap. No effort, no stress, no struggle. But over time, the cost becomes heavy. It steals opportunities, erodes confidence, and leaves you with regret. Discomfort, on the other hand, feels expensive up front. It requires effort, discipline, and sacrifice. Yet the reward it delivers compounds over time in the form of resilience, strength, wisdom, and success. You must decide which price you are willing to pay: the slow pain of staying the same or the temporary pain of growing. Growth is not found in familiar places. It lives in the challenges you avoid, the risks you fear, and the opportunities that push you past your limits. The comfort zone may feel safe, but it is also the cage that keeps you small. To step out of it is to step into possibility. Every time you choose effort over ease, you expand. Every time you embrace discomfort, you grow. And every time you trade comfort for challenge, you move closer to the person you are capable of becoming. Time doesn't wait, and that is what makes it the most valuable resource you will ever have. Unlike money, you cannot earn it back. Unlike possessions, you cannot replace it once it is gone. Unlike opportunities, it does not come around again in the same form. Every second that passes is gone forever, and laziness is the silent thief that robs you of those moments. Laziness disguises itself as rest, as if you are recharging, but true rest renews you while laziness drains you. Rest is intentional, a pause with purpose, while laziness is avoidance, a pause that steals momentum and leaves you weaker than before. When you give in to laziness, you are not preserving your energy. You are throwing away the only thing you cannot afford to lose: time. Think about how quickly days become weeks and weeks become months. How often do you look back and wonder where the time went? The truth is, it went into the pockets of laziness. It went into hours of scrolling, excuses, hesitation, and avoidance. None of those things gave anything back. Laziness promises ease but delivers regret. It whispers that you have more time later, but later never comes. What it really does is leave you with the bitter taste of wasted potential. Those who achieve greatness do not have more hours in a day than anyone else. They simply treat time as sacred. They understand that once a moment passes, it cannot be recovered. While others surrender hours to laziness, they invest those hours into building, learning, creating, and moving closer to their vision. The difference between those who succeed and those who stagnate is not talent, but the way they value time. Success is simply the accumulated result of not letting laziness steal what cannot be replaced. Laziness often masquerades as harmless. You tell yourself you will start tomorrow, you will get serious next week, you will finally commit when the timing feels right. But the clock does not pause while you delay. Tomorrow becomes next week, and next week becomes next year, until you realize years have slipped through your fingers. The opportunity to grow, to create, to change is gone not because you lacked ability, but because you let laziness waste the minutes that mattered. Time doesn't wait for your excuses. It doesn't wait for your fear, and it doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Rest should not be confused with laziness. Rest is strategic. It allows you to recover so you can move forward stronger. Laziness is avoidance. It weakens you because it pretends to be harmless downtime, but leaves you further behind than before. Rest invests in your future. Laziness steals from it. The danger is that laziness often feels good in the moment. It is easier to stay in bed, to scroll endlessly, to avoid effort, but the comfort is temporary while the cost is permanent. You can always rest with intention, but you cannot undo wasted time. To respect time is to respect yourself. Every choice you make with your time is a statement about what matters to you. If you give your time to laziness, you are declaring that your comfort matters more than your growth. If you invest your time in meaningful action, you are declaring that your future matters more than your excuses. You cannot control how much time you are given, but you can control how you use it. The clock is always moving forward, and the question is whether you are moving with it or letting it leave you behind. Work is the bridge to dreams because no vision, no matter how inspiring, can become reality without effort. Everyone has dreams, visions of who they could be, what they could achieve, and how their life could look. These dreams light a fire inside the imagination and give a sense of possibility. But dreams without work are nothing more than fantasies. They stay locked in your mind, beautiful but useless, unless you are willing to put in the consistent action that turns them into something tangible. Progress is not born from wishing, it is born from working. It is easy to picture a better life. It is easy to talk about the goals you want to achieve or the changes you want to make. But speaking and imagining require no sacrifice. The difference between those who live their dreams and those who only talk about them is the willingness to pay the price of effort. Dreams demand sweat, focus, discipline, and persistence. They demand early mornings, late nights, uncomfortable sacrifices, and countless small steps forward when no one is watching. That bridge between where you are and where you want to be can only be crossed by steady, deliberate work. Work gives weight to vision. Without it, vision floats away like smoke. A person who says they want to write a book but never sits down to write a page has not built a bridge. They've only admired the destination from afar. A person who dreams of building a business but never risks, never plans, never grinds through the hard days will remain a dreamer and nothing more. Work transforms desire into progress, and progress creates the momentum that makes dreams real. The beauty of work is that it does not require perfection, only persistence. You do not need to have all the answers to begin. You need only to take the first step. That first step leads to the next, and eventually you create movement that builds into momentum. Each hour of work, each choice to push through laziness, each effort you invest adds another plank to the bridge you are building toward your vision. Over time, that bridge becomes strong enough to carry you from imagination into reality. Work is also the great equalizer. Dreams belong to everyone, but only those who act on them will see results. Talent alone is not enough. Inspiration alone is not enough. Luck alone is not enough. The world is filled with talented, inspired, and even lucky people who achieved nothing because they never did the work. On the other hand, countless people who began with little talent or few resources built extraordinary lives because they refused to stop working toward their vision. Work makes the difference. There's also a hidden gift in work. It changes you before it changes your circumstances. Every effort shapes your character. Every sacrifice strengthens your resilience. Every challenge teaches you something that dreaming alone never could. By working toward your dreams, you not only move closer to the goal, but you also become the kind of person capable of handling that goal once it is achieved. Work builds both the bridge and the traveler. Dreams will always inspire you, but inspiration without effort will leave you standing still. Work demands more, but it also delivers more. It turns vision into achievement, desire into fulfillment, and potential into reality. Dreams show you what is possible, work shows you what is real. And the truth is simple: without work, your dreams remain fantasies, but with work, they become the life you are meant to live.